Good morning. All right. Clock says 10, so I think we could get started now. So this is the regular open meeting of the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission on Thursday, October 16. It's 10 a.m. So we'll go ahead and get started with a roll call.
Commissioner Nyberg?
Present.
Commissioner Aguilar?
Present.
Commissioner O'Connell?
Here.
All commissioners are here and you have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
So the next item is the pledge and salute to the state flag, which we don't have any, so we'll have to get used to imagining them.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among United cultures.
And I'm just noticing that Lori on the Zoom does have a picture of both flags, so that's convenient. We can just look at her little box. And so, commissioners, we have an agenda before us. We have 3 consent action items and 6 regular action items. Do you have any suggested changes to the agenda? Not seeing any. We'll go ahead then and approve the agenda with a voice vote. So all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And no opposed. So next item is announcements. I have a few announcements of hearings that are upcoming. On October 23, we're going to be hosting a wildfire workshop. So this is the 4th in the wildfire workshop series. And we're going to have a recap of what we've covered in the previous workshops and importantly discuss the potential next steps. So where do we go from here now that we've had good conversation? That's going to be a hybrid workshop. The in-person location is going to be in the Roundhouse in room 309. And then on October 28, we're going to have a public hearing in docket number 2556 UT. And that's for a 200-foot right-of-way width for the proposed Bullow project. And then on October 29, there will be a public hearing in docket number 2548 UT. And this is a proceeding concerning an application by PNM for 3 purchased power agreements and 3 energy storage agreements that are associated with 3 purchase power agreements where there are 3 energy storage agreements associated with 3 solar generation resources that are co-located. And this is to serve a single customer. That dedicated customer is Greater Kudu, also known as Meta. Those are the announcements that I have for the hearings that are upcoming between now and the next open meeting. Commissioners, do you have any announcements?
Thanks, but no.
General Counsel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make one quick announcement and then follow up with another in the interest of parity. The first one is that the Office of General Counsel is hiring for an attorney right now. So if anybody out there is looking to join us, please take a look at the SPO website to find that opening. And then in the interest of parity, we're also hiring for a chief hearing examiner. That's not an OGC, that's in the hearing examiners division, an engineer professional and a grid technology specialist. I think those are all still open. And you can find those on our website.
Yeah, please share those if you know somebody who would be a good fit. I think that does it for the announcements. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. I'll check first in person. Do we have anybody here for public comment? We do have one. Thank you. So please state your name and affiliation
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Carrie Hatley. I'm Senior Counsel for ConocoPhillips, and I'm here to provide public comment in advance to the motion hearing on Excel's generation portfolio. I would like to express our support for the expedited timeline in that proceeding. I feel that our company feels that Southeast New Mexico needs to get this generation online as soon as possible for economic development in the state, and we support the expedited timeline. I wanted to add one additional piece of nuance. A motion has been filed suggesting that if the NMPRC mirrored the Texas CCN proceedings, there could be some synergies. And I just wanted to add that there is some nuance involved with that side of the proceeding, wherein some of the resources may be coming on at a different schedule from some of the other resources. Some resources in Texas may get expedited processing while others may not. So I just wanted to urge the commission to carefully look at that if they do decide they want to seek to mirror Texas as a kind of third option. And thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment today.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have anybody else in person wishing to provide public comment? It looks like we don't. Patrick, do we have anybody online?
So Chair, we don't have anyone online for public comment.
Okay. Thank you. So I think that concludes our public comment. The next item is approval of prior meeting minutes. We have 2 minutes, one for September 18, that was a regular open meeting, and one for September 25. That was a special open meeting that we had. Commissioners, I do not have any changes to the minutes that have been posted. Are there any suggestions?
I move that we adopt the minutes for September 18th and September 25th.
I'll second.
Commissioner Nyberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Yes.
The motion to approve the 2 sets of minutes, September 18th, regular open meeting, September 25th, special open meeting passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So next matter of business is the consent action items. We have 3 orders, potential orders here for potential approval. Commissioners, do you have any comments that you wish to make about the consent action items?
Yeah, I'd like to say something about 250020 UT. We've been working hard and proud of progress we've made at answering questions in timely fashion. This one could have been answered sooner if not for me, so I'll take accountability for that. I looked at, what this is, appointing people to SRUSF Advisory Board. I looked at what that board does. I looked at how many positions of that board are filled. I looked at how we didn't really have that many applicants. So I just asked if we could just accept all the applicants rather than follow our rules. And the advice I got back from OGC was we're better off following our rules. So I just wanted, and I accept that, I agree with it. Thank you to OGC. So just wanted to point out SRUSF board, the delay was on my part. And I agree that it reminded me of something that, we did when we took this job 2.5 years ago, was just commitment to commission following its own rules. So that was a good reminder to me. So that's all I wanted to say.
Any other comments or discussion? Okay, well then I will move to approve the 3 orders on the consent action items section of our agenda.
I'll second.
Commissioner Nyberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Yes.
The motion to approve the 3 orders on the consent item agenda passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now on to our regular action items. The first item is going to be presented by Mr. Russell Fisk. This is docket number 250002 UT. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Fisk. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This matter comes before you on New Mexico Gas Company's proposed changes to its line extension policy. Specifically, the gas company proposed that may be allowed to increase the credits that it provides to line extension customers, the revenue credits and the lot credits. There were a number of interveners in this matter, but and the recommended decision that was issued by the hearing examiner recommended approval of the proposed changes. There was only one intervener that filed exceptions to the recommended decision. That was Western Resource Advocates. And they recommended the commission reject the RD. They objected to some of the findings of the RD. They said that the hearing examiner did not adequately take into account their arguments concerning their future projections as to what they saw as potential decreases in future gas consumption and replacement of gas consumption with electricity, as well as some other arguments. This order would reject Western Resource Advocates' exceptions and would find that the hearing examiner, correctly considered the evidence, applied the law, and came to reasonable conclusions. And with that, I will take any questions.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, I had a few things I came here prepared to say and start off with. Thank you, Darren Zigich. Staff provided good testimony in this case, and we're trying to elevate staff's role in these processes and move beyond just compliance checking to taking a position, and staff witness Zigich did that. So I think we're better off in this process of trying to move forward if we acknowledge the things that we want to see. So again, thank you to Darren. Something that's well covered in the RD, and it's really, I think, a good reminder or maybe lesson is that if you're wanting to make a big policy change, start at the top, not at the bottom. The RD kind of hangs on what the commission's existing rule is, and the rule is tied to existing law. So if you want to make a change on a policy level, you're better off petitioning for a rulemaking than trying to make a change in one utility's advice notice. And then having said that, this case really, for me, called into question gas companies' energy efficiency programs. I mean, that's just collateral damage, I think, in the discussion. Gas companies arguing that gas use hasn't changed over 20 years and new customers use the same as old customers despite efficiency. And so one of the things, just heads up, when next time a gas company files an energy efficiency plan, I'm going to be looking to see if this is just a marketing program or if it actually does something, because the evidence they provided is it does not. So, and then in that world, I also found pretty unpersuasive arguments that it's the commission's role to enforce monopoly service obligations. It's not. Our job is to regulate utilities, but then if on the margins there are better choices for customers, that's what we should be promoting. We shouldn't be trying to protect customer use of an individual utility service. And then in the world of providing energy options, similar, the best world for a regulator to be in is that you're doing your job, regulating a monopoly service that's important, but doing it in a way that the community being served can evolve and grow as technology changes or price changes or those type of things. So we shouldn't be clamping down energy options. We should be expanding them across the whole spectrum, right? So going back to the point about energy efficiency programs, one of my complaints that I've made in these open meetings before is the way the law is written. Energy efficiency plans have to be looked at in isolation, utility by utility. I think it's better if gas company can be looking at ways to reduce energy with the big E, not the small e. So if there's something you can do on the gas side to reduce electric use, you should be able to do that in an energy efficiency program. Conversely, electric utilities should be able to count gas savings in energy efficiency plans, because that's how we're really going to start seeing the benefit of efficiency, especially when gas companies telling us it's not doing anything. So anyway, that was just my assessment of the case. And having said all that, again, goes back to where I started. It hangs on what does the existing rule say. And so appreciate staff, appreciate the hearing examiners, and I'm in favor of the proposed order that Mr. Fisk brought to the meeting.
Mr. Chair, I don't have any comments, but I will move adoption of the final order approving line extension policy in docket number 25-00002-UT as it appears before us.
I'll second.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilar,
Yes.
Commissioner Nyberg.
Yes.
The motion to approve the order as presented in 25-00002-UT passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we might be able to drop 2 digits off of that.
Thank you for your comments on that item, Commissioner O'Connell. So next we have docket number 2538 UT. So I dropped the zeros.
Yeah.
And we have Mr. Kevin Getgo to present this item. The floor is yours.
Okay, it's just making sure I needed to press the button with the new location. Yeah, good morning. The case 25-0038-UT is the matter of the application for approval of El Paso Electric Company's Renewable Energy Act Plan for 2026 and the 9th revised rate number 38 RPS cost rider. The major item in this case revolves around the Santa Teresa project procurement, which is a procurement for New Mexico of 150 megawatts of solar energy and 50 megawatts of battery storage. The application was filed on May 1st. On July 17th, there was a public hearing held. Briefs were filed on August 14th, and at that point, staff and El Paso Electric both supported the approval of the application. On August 26th, El Paso Electric filed a notice of communication to the docket after briefs had been filed, informing the commission that EPE had received on August 1st, 2025, a communication from the developer of the Santa Teresa project, DESRI, also D.E. Shaw Renewable Investments, informing the commission that informed El Paso Electric that recent changes in law, in particular related to the imposition of tariffs by President Trump, will likely result in unforeseen seller compliance costs exceeding the compliance cost cap that was contained in the contract between El Paso Electric and DESRI. More than 60 days have passed since that letter was issued, and no further communication has been provided to the commission with respect to any further developments with respect to those possible cost increases. So at this time, there is an absence of knowledge in front of the commission with respect to what the pricing could possibly be for that Santa Teresa project. I spent a little time developing that because I think that's the crux of the matter at this point. I'll also share that a bench request was issued, to which EPE responded, informing the commission that El Paso Electric intends to file its next general rate case by the end of February 2026. So that brings us to where we stand with respect to the recommended decision and the three alternative orders that are before you. The recommended decision recommended the approval of the REA plan along with the Santa Teresa project up to the amount of costs that were filed in the application, but not any additional costs that might come about as a result of those tariffs, et cetera. Approval was recommended only up until the next rate case, at which point it was recommended to have a review both of the Santa Teresa project costs and the RPS rider in general. So the three orders before you have considered the case and the recommended decision. The first order approves the 2026 REA plan, including the procurement of the Santa Teresa project, but only up to the amount of the costs that were included in the application, and that is for plan year 2026. It orders that additional costs should be brought before the commission in another docket should those additional costs that are now possible become actual. And EPE is also ordered to address the cost recovery mechanism for the Santa Teresa project in their next general rate case. The second order denies the Santa Teresa project procurement on the basis that the costs of the project are at this time unknown. It orders EPE to refile an updated 2026 REA plan that complies with the RPS. And I'll pause there because I think that's enough with respect to that second order. The third order builds off of the second order in that it also denies the Santa Teresa project for the same reason. It resets the rider just as the second one does, doing reconciliations for plan year 2024. And it orders EPE to refile an updated 2026 REA plan. Additionally, it includes explicit language regarding the commission's preference to address costs in general rate cases and speaks to the utility's burden to justify the use of a rider as an exception rather than the rule. As a final note, all three orders make reference to the final order in case 25-00027, which you all decided upon a month ago. And its finding that the parties, and generally parties that come before the commission, should meet and confer to consider whether to request informal workshops or a rulemaking to develop future guidance that it could apply to future RPS cases for all regulated utilities. That is essentially it. The only point that I think I should clarify is that with the second two orders that deny the Santa Teresa project, the RPS rider would still be reconciled with 2024 and go into effect with the approvals of all other elements in the application. With that final clarification, I stand for questions.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Gedko. So one question on the two orders that deny the procurement of the Santa Teresa project. Is there, and they require El Paso Electric to come back and file their REA plan. Is there a deadline for when they would need to do that by written in the order?
No.
So I think as you noted, the RD considered the issue that we have this letter from Desiree, the developer, in the record, and we know that there could be potential additional costs. I don't think we could necessarily say that affirmatively, but it seems possible and maybe even likely. I think the RD being in, or the hearing examiners being in a difficult situation, which we're now in right now, I think they proposed a reasonable outcome. I also thought that El Paso Electric had a reasonable exception that could potentially be accommodated. This is a very difficult case. Honestly, I'm coming into this with a very open mind because as I was rereading all of the orders, not exactly sure right now which one I support. Appreciate having other heads here to help us talk through this. I think that's kind of where I am now is I did really want to talk about the situation with my fellow commissioners here. I'll turn it over to see if there are any comments.
Yeah, I can jump in next. I'm the proponent of denying the procurement. And first of all, to your question of is there a deadline in the requiring when EPE would refile, there isn't. And that was by design. There is a deadline. EPE has ongoing legal obligation to comply with the renewable portfolio standards. So clock's ticking. What I tried to do was give EPE ultimate flexibility to do the best thing possible. So I agree that if these cost changes that we are on notice are coming are marginal, the RD is a good solution. But we don't know that, so what if tariffs cause the project to cost double? Then suddenly it's not reasonable. And then we'd be in an unfortunate position to be in a price taker in that situation because we've approved a procurement not knowing what the cost is. And then if you follow the logic of the RD and you look at the REA, utilities are entitled to recover reasonable costs. So how do you then judge later after you've already approved the procurement that this cost increase was unreasonable as part of a RPS compliance thing? If it was, there's a special law that is attached to RPS compliance. So utilities have better cost recovery arguments than they might on a generic or normal procurement. So my goal was to say, hey, we've got news that came in after the hearing. The news tells me that the price is changing, don't know how much. I want to give EPE just blank sheet of paper flexibility of going as far as terminating the contract. So if we approve the procurement, they might feel like they can't terminate the contract. So if they aren't able to negotiate these price changes with Shaw with, both hands, instead of having one tied behind their back, they might not be able to do the best thing. So that was really my goal. And then again, to the point of the deadline, there is a deadline. It's EPE's job to comply with the RPS. And I want to give them the tools to do that job as well as they can. So that was the thought process behind denying the procurement. It wasn't intended to be punitive or anything like that. It was just recognition of we're in a weird world right now, and the law tells me I've got to agree that the cost is reasonable before I approve something. I don't know what the cost is, so can't do that.
And I know that we have another also issue, kind of overarching issue about writers, and maybe we can take that one a little bit after and focus kind of on this denial. So as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about what is the best situation here for ratepayers? And I can't figure that out because there's information that we don't know. I see the point about providing maximum flexibility. Under the terms of the agreement, EP had 60 days from receipt of the notice to do various things. We don't know if they did them. Those 60 days have passed. It would have been prudent, I think, to communicate and update the commission on anything that has occurred there, but we don't know that. And as I continue to think of it, I do gravitate more towards the idea that providing El Paso maximum flexibility to advocate with developers on behalf of its customers will be better for customers.
Mr. Chair, you started off with this as a difficult case, and it's difficult from a couple perspectives. We have a rule that provides that a rider is the appropriate vehicle for this type of expenditure. And we had a discussion on the 25th of September about our general view of riders, or at least as I recall. And so I was trying to accommodate that issue, and that's why the language, the third order just simply sets forth some language that I had inserted. Frankly, the language could go in either order, the one approving or denying. Because I felt it was important to carry forth our discussion that we had with respect to the Southwestern Public Service Company issue on the 25th, where we did not allow a rider and told them to put these types of expenditures in their upcoming rate case, which is going to be filed soon. So I was trying to deal with that issue. The fact of the matter is, I can see situations where approval of an unknown is appropriate. And I think it goes back to the history of why riders were used in the 1970s. You had exponential cost increases of fuel, specifically natural gas, that at any moment was unknown. So we approved riders based on unknowns, but knowing that the market was setting a price virtually on a daily basis, if not more frequently. So the purpose of the riders was to allow them to recoup their cost of fuel prices, even not knowing what those fuel costs would be. Here you have a purchase power agreement, I guess, facility that is, they're wanting to get recovery of those costs that they'll be paying for it. The only reason why I focused on the denial was because it felt like if we denied it and left that issue open, it gave El Paso Electric and the commission a little more bargaining power, and it didn't forestall a bargaining position that I saw if we approved it. There's no incentive for the developer or for El Paso Electric to do anything but say, okay, we're going to pay this price. That price being unknown at the current time. So to keep some incentive to keep that price lower, I put my comments on the order that denied the approval, knowing that we would see this issue shortly. And then I sent out a bench request asking when their next rate case was, because like in the Southwestern Public Service case, if it was soon and they knew that number, and our preference would be to really deal with these issues in a rate case, have them put it in. If they don't have that number by the time they do the rate case, then fine, they can approach us and ask for recovery of those costs through a rider mechanism. And I would, I certainly, speaking for myself, would be supportive of that request, because I do think riders are a tool in our toolbox, but I think our preference ought to be to have these costs really vetted through the rate making process. And I do like the recommended decision that stated recommended approval, but up to the next rate case, so that we try to get a lot of this stuff into the rate base and not have all these riders just sticking on unless they have some specific reason to do so. So that was the genesis of my the language that you see highlighted in the third order, but it could easily be adopted in the other order that would approve it. And frankly, I'm wanting to hear kind of the thoughts on why we should do that as opposed to denial, because we do have a rule that indicates that this is a vehicle that allows a recovery of these types of agreements through a rider mechanism. And so, you know, El Paso Electric chose to seek reimbursement of those costs through the rider, which our rules allow. And it kind of complicates it, because at least what I heard at the 25th of September meeting was that we really kind of want to see these things in a rate case, if that's going to be done in a close proximity to when the projects are completed here. So that's kind of my thought process on that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner Nybert. For me, it's analogous to buying a car, right? You can negotiate the price of the car, and you should do that, get that locked down before you start haggling over financing. And so there is a distinction between cost and recovery. And the rider is all about recovery. It's not about cost. And so the issue before us right now, frankly, is the cost reasonable? We don't know. So that's why I was focusing on the cost side, because got to get that settled first. And then when you get into recovery with the rider, I agree. I am very happy we had that discussion on the SPS case, and where my head was at on that is I know there are excellent uses for riders, you know, underground rider for Rio Rancho, fuel clause. I know in renewable plans, there's a couple reasons why riders happen. And of course, I can't pull it up in the rule right now, but you know, if the utility is allowed to recover all reasonable costs, then it becomes the financing question. Would you rather pay as you go, or would you rather pay interest later? And so if you put it in a rider, you can pay as you go. And then, so that's a reason that maybe you use a rider in a renewable plan case. The extreme, which is where we're heading with some, especially I'd say P&M is the number one example of this, just because they're the only utility that exists only in New Mexico. You'll have 80% of your generation portfolio potentially in a rider. And then that brings up questions of not just recovery of reasonable costs, but fairness, right? If you're trying to figure out how to allocate the capacity that's required to meet demand, and your whole portfolio is in a rider, that might be more difficult, maybe not. And then just a little bit of history on this. Another reason why riders were a very good solution in renewable plans is there used to be exemptions for large customers. And so putting it in the rider made it easier to implement the exemption. So it was kind of more like a Rio Rancho underground rider. So anyway, that's how we got to where we're at. Where we're going is more complicated. So for me, the nuance over what we talked about with the SPS case is I am not opposed to using riders to get cost recovery for RPS resources going, because it's a way to pay as you go rather than fighting over interest cost for something that's already happened. You know, it's not a forward-looking interest question, it's a backward-looking interest question, which is super weird for me anyway. But then once you get to a rate case, then you can get all this stuff on the table and try to figure out not just recovery of reasonable cost, but fairness on rate design. So that's the rate making process that frankly SPS tried to minimize in their case, and I think that carried over to here. So I'm just sharing all this to give you how this fits with that last discussion for me. I also think similar to the gas company advice notice, there's better ways to ask people to address that issue in a rate case than sticking it in a final order of one utility's renewable plan filing. So I would prefer and happy to work with you on this, but let's work with OGC to figure out what's the best vehicle to put folks on notice. Hey, next time you file a rate case, give us a rate design where the riders are collapsed into base rates. And then that way we know that information will be on the record. That way we know we can consider it. But I don't know what that is, not a lawyer, but that's the kind of thing that I would be supportive of working on, some kind of communication that's broader than just EPE. Because another issue here is, you know, if we do something like that just in the EPE case, well, SPS and PNM weren't here, issue wasn't briefed. Those are the kind of things I worry about putting it in a final order. So I understand why you put this in here, and I agree it's a logical extension of the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. I just don't support putting it in whatever order we approve today. I think there's a better way to do that, and let's work on that.
Well, we did address it in the SPS case somewhat a week or two ago, and so I thought it was just a natural genesis of that discussion to continue to have a consistent voice on the issue, and that we needed to address that in this case as well. And certainly it may prompt us to look at our own rules. You said one other thing, just to clarify, you said all the riders get collapsed in the rate case. There may be certain circumstances, and you pointed out the Rio Rancho case, where that rider would never collapse into the rate case, because you want that rider to be specific as to a specific geographic area. So there are reasons not to collapse some riders into the rate case, but I think generally, and what I'm hearing consistently, is that we would really like to move toward that direction of really being specific as to which riders should continue, which ones should be enveloped within the rate base and move forward in that fashion. And so I hope the utilities are hearing what we're saying, because I think now for the second time in 2 weeks, we've expressed that, and whether the language gets put in the order or not, I think you're hearing it from the commission as we sit here today.
Yeah, and a difference for me between the SPS order and this one is we were approving significant procurements and we knew the rate case was in November. This one, if the order is deny the procurement, hopefully EPE shows up tomorrow with, hey, we sorted this out and it's a negligible cost increase, and then we can turn it around really quick. But we don't know, because as the chair said, they had obligations in the contract and we have no idea what they've done with those obligations in the contract. If it was just throw it on us, then that's a whole different conversation. So we'll find out, because EPE has the obligation to comply with RPS. So they're going to come back to us at some date on this case. But then their rate case isn't filed till February, I think is what they said in the final order. So it's just another area of uncertainty compared to where we were at with SPS. We knew that we'd get through the rate case probably before the SPS resources are even online.
Yeah, the other thing I would add is the language I propose is really, as I would characterize it, dicta in the case. It really doesn't go to the crux of what we're deciding, but in my mind, it sends out our thought process that's now been enunciated in 2 meetings and is in the case being more of a warning or a, hey, here's kind of an issue that we've been grappling with. So, you know, in my mind, it doesn't hinge on the case itself. It's really meant to send a message.
Yeah, on that larger issue of the writer, I have to say, it seems unnecessary to include it, as Commissioner O'Connell just said, especially if we end up denying. And a lot of it makes sense to me. What I keep coming back to is that I would rather know more from different parties before making that statement. I don't think we've heard from all of the utilities on this, and other interveners, typical interveners like the Department of Justice and other interveners. I would prefer to have a more focused conversation with a larger group of people on that issue. That's, you know, kind of where I am on that. I did want to maybe correct something that I said, or try to hedge a little bit. I said that El Paso had 60 days to do something. As I read the letter that they received from DESRI, it's kind of unclear. They might just be providing a notice, but it also kind of reads like they're invoking the section 22.2. So if I was EP, I would have asked them, what exactly are you doing here? And so just wanted to hedge on that a little bit, because maybe that's not what this letter did. And so therefore, maybe El Paso did not have a deadline. Either way, I do think El Paso should have come in and updated us. But just wanted to make that clarification for the record.
Mr. Chair, we should also probably let everyone know that the order that denies the Santa Teresa project, the order itself approves most of what they asked for. It's only that one aspect that that our discussion has hinged on. So we are approving virtually everything else they asked for, but it's that one Santa Teresa project that maybe the costs are unknown at this time that our discussion has revolved around.
A couple of other points, just given that if we are working towards this second version of the order, I think, of denial, the first one is the cost may not have gone up at all. I think that's a possibility. And so in that instance, I would rather make this denial without prejudice to having the same project being proposed again. The other thing is that we continue to have this larger issue of tax credits expiring next summer. And I see the logic in not including a deadline for El Paso here, but I also do see those tax credits as a deadline for El Paso here in order to maximize the benefits that customers would receive from these renewable, whatever project, I guess it ends up being, but I guess I would also include a note in the order to that effect, that there's that deadline and El Paso should be working to receive or the benefits there of the tax credits for their customers.
Yeah, that tax credits was one of the biggest things I was struggling with in trying to pick the best path forward. And it goes back to what we've been talking about. All we've got really is a letter from Shaw saying they're not standing by the price in the contract. Who knows what that is? And if it's a small amount, then speed's more important, get the tax credits, right? If it's a big amount, then kind of who cares what the tax credits are, because they've swamped that with tariffs. So again, falls into this category of do not know, but I agree with you, and I support those additions to the order.
Yeah, and just want to correct myself one other time because I realized that I said something else that, the part of the credits, you have to commence construction by January 4 of next year. There's another provision in there where you need to have a project completed by, so I think it's either one of those. So didn't want to necessarily tie El Paso to that first option of how you receive the credits.
Mr. Chair, you indicated to maybe put some language that we decide that aspect of this order without prejudice. An alternative might be to remand that aspect to the hearing examiner so that when those costs are known in this docket, hearing examiner already has the docket, can pick it up probably in a much quicker fashion because the docket's pending, could have a hearing on the new information that's secured and get that back to us maybe more quickly than having them reinstitute a complete new case. And maybe general counsel might want to weigh in on that thought, but it seems to me that we could remand that aspect of the case back to the hearing examiner, waiting for El Paso Electric to secure the actual information to have the numbers and move forward in that fashion. I'm
Yeah. My
for
question on
thoughts.
that is, does our 6-month deadline allow us to do that?
The quick answer is no, given I think it's an October 28th statutory deadline. Yeah, that's the quick answer.
Yeah, no, I really like that suggestion, but I was afraid I didn't ask the question because I'm a rule follower, but yeah, if we can figure that out, that would be nice because it would cut down maybe the time required. Because, we tried to make it clear that as soon as El Paso's got the best path forward, they should get back in here so we can keep things moving and get tax credits, right? And your process would speed things up, but are we allowed to do it is my problem.
I'll take another look and talk to some folks afterwards as well. And just off the top of my head, I don't, my head's going to exception to a rule, something of that sort, but I don't want to say anything off the cuff right here. Yeah, and it's statutory, so.
Yeah, I think it would be better to make a decision today.
Yeah,
Well,
I'd still like to know the answer to the question, but I agree with you.
I mean, the decision would be made, but you're basically punting the one issue back to the hearing examiner to allow a more, I'd say, efficient and quick process. And if it's, I can't imagine that that we wouldn't have some leeway there. But you guys know the rules better than I at this point.
One natural rule is an El Paso case is going to get appealed. So. So again, in the world of giving the most certainty and most flexibility, I think let's just make the decision today and then be flexible as we can. And, EPE doesn't have to style it as a renewable plan filing. It can be a PPA request that they're going to use the RECs for RPS. And I think we can look at that pretty quick too. So again, it's EPE's job to make those choices, but just want to make sure they know that the whole goal here is give them the power to do what the best thing here is, because they know better what's going on than we do. All I know is I can't trust the price.
Well, I think we've talked about this quite a bit, and we might be maybe ready for a motion. Of course, we could pause after the motion to discuss it further. But I will move to adopt the second version that denies the procurement of the Santa Teresa project, approves other things that were requested in the application as is stated in the order, and also adds that the denial is without prejudice, and that in considering how El Paso Electric is going to meet the RPS requirements for 2026, they consider the tax credit expiration deadlines, and something to that effect, as I think Mr. Getko could revise. That's a long motion. Do I need to correct any of it? Okay.
Just clarification, you said the second order denying, it's actually the original denial motion.
Yes.
Not the second one, because the second one had my additional language.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. In my head, I was thinking of them as 1, 2, and 3. So it's the original denial order that I was referencing.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay. Do we have discussion on that? Any further discussion or clarifications?
Yeah, my discussion is my offer to Commissioner Nybert holds that let's work on something that's guidance for all utilities for next time they file a rate case, and we'll do better than we could do here today. We want to be more precise about which riders we're talking about, because I'm not talking about collapsing the fuel clause right into base rates, but just want to make sure people that are listening, I'm not just running with scissors here. But well, let's work on that. I think we've got a little bit of time to work with OGC to figure out what the best way to do that is.
And in that regard, it's not my intent to do away with riders. It's an important tool that we need to utilize, that the utilities need to utilize. But again, in my view, it's their burden to show why the rider is necessary. It may be timing, it may be because of unusual circumstances. It's their burden, and certainly would be within our discretion to grant or deny. But I think there ought to be something, and maybe we need to deal with the rule as well, as Mr. Gitko has alluded to. So it's probably a bigger discussion, but I'll support the motion that's been made, and certainly be willing to work with you on trying to get get something started. We probably need help from OGC in light of the rule that's out there and some other things to figure out how we ought to proceed in our discussion.
Just to keep it front and center, given what was said in the final order in 2527, that it placed the onus on the parties before the commission in general to meet and confer and come to the commission with either a proposal of informal workshops or a rulemaking. You could take the opportunity to put timelines upon that if you wanted to, or you don't necessarily have to do that today, but it's something that we could do through various forms.
Thank you.
I'll add here, shifting over a little bit to a different topic, that the denial here is there. We have a resource before us where we don't know what the full costs are. And in the interest of giving the utility maximum flexibility in negotiating on behalf of that customer, I think that denial is the right thing to do here for both the utility and the customer, so that we don't place the utility here in a corner where I think they're better off, and so are the customers, having the flexibility that this option provides them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you.
So I think we're ready for a vote.
Commissioner Nyberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilar,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Yes.
The motion to adopt the original order denying the application, including language concerning tax credits and making the denial without prejudice, passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so on to item 3. This is docket 2521 UT, and we have Miss Alyssa Herrera Waldrop here to present it. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. This matter before you today concerns EPE's variance request from Rule 17.5.440.8C1 NMAC. In its petition, EPE asked the Commission to grant a variance from Rule 440, which requires electric utilities to provide notice to the Commission and Commission staff 30 days prior to the start of the construction on projects which are related to extensions, system improvements, repairs or replacements, or additions to its infrastructures. EPE had 6 construction projects that began between August and November of 2024, in which its Rule 440 reports were not filed with the Commission. At the June 26th, 2025 open meeting, the Commission denied EPE's petition for variance and issued an order to show cause, in which EPE and staff has responded. Here, the Commission has statutory and rule-based authority to issue monetary penalties in this matter for the rule violations. So before you today are 3 separate orders. The first order exercises the Commission's authority to issue a $60,000 penalty to EPE for its failure to comply with Rule 440. The second order adopts staff's recommendation, which is to issue a $25,000 penalty to EPE and hold $15,000 in abeyance, contingent upon EPE's future compliance with Rule 440. And the third order exercises the Commission's authority to issue no penalty to EPE in this matter. With that, I will stand for questions. Thank you.
Commissioners, is anybody want to get us started? Commissioner O'Connell.
I'm willing. I'm just a proponent of accepting staff's recommendation, and the logic behind that is arguably staff is the party that was deprived of their ability to do their job through this process. So anyway, that was my going in position. And also similar to the other case, shout out to staff. I appreciated the filings they made in this case, and that they were well argued and well reasoned. So thank you, staff.
Mr. Chairman, I support the order that does not issue a penalty, and in large part, I support that because of what has transpired since that issue was brought to light. We had a meeting where the CEO of El Paso Electric appeared before us. She made what I considered statements that gave me some assurance that those digressions would not be repeated, that she personally would be responsible, make sure that filings were performed on time, and that they took steps internally to address those issues. And in my mind, penalties are there to force compliance. And in my mind, we have reasonable assurances that compliance will be performed, and therefore issuing a penalty to force compliance, in my mind, is not necessary in this case. So I support not issuing the penalty. I appreciated the efforts that the CEO made, and not only that, but her willingness to continue dialogue with this commission on a going forward basis. And so I think we've gotten the assurances that we needed to address the deficiencies that occurred and seemed to be a repetitive occurrence for some time. And I acknowledge that, but I think we received what really this commission needed and wants on a going forward basis. Thank you.
Well, I'll out myself as the one who had proposed the higher penalty. But at the same time, I wanted to discuss the options. Honestly, I think there are a lot of elements here that we need to consider. I agree that some of the things that favor no penalty are that the utility self-reported. They also required mandatory staff training and established procedures so that this doesn't happen again. And all of those things are positive, right? That admitting that, hey, we made a mistake and we need to fix it. I also recognize that some of the costs are come from the FERC tariff, where the utility doesn't have a choice as to whether they're going to pursue these costs, and they have to, because they have an obligation to expand their system to accommodate the customers. And then there are some things that it's just kind of questionable. For example, in some of the comments, they blame the Form 440, that it's finicky and not working. And that just seems like it's not a persuasive argument. To me, it seems like it's making excuses, especially when you consider that the other utilities have filed their 440s. And there's also this argument that the commission does not have the authority to impose a penalty. I really don't buy that. I don't know how one could make that argument with a straight face. And so on the one hand, it seems like they want to improve. On the other hand, it seems like it's just kind of excuses. Also consider what message we send. I think that if we send, but if we don't impose a penalty, it might send the wrong message here that you don't need to comply with the rules and it's going to be fine. And Commissioner O'Connell mentioned depriving the commission and staff of the opportunity to, raise a red flag and say, hold on, we want to look at these costs before you enter into it. I think that's real, especially when you consider that we're talking over $70 million worth of projects. So it's not insignificant. Again, some of those costs are because of the obligations that El Paso has under their FERC tariff. And so I think just balancing all of these things and including that we have staff who has proposed a way forward, that's kind of the option where I end up landing.
Mr. Chair, 7 months ago, Ms. Macarenas and I testified before the House on the House floor over a bill that raised penalties for gas pipeline company violations. And the question was specifically asked, why were we doing that? Because are we just intending to fine people for violations? And I'll tell you what our response was. The response was we had to increase our fines in that case to comply with federal guidelines, or we would lose the federal money that's associated with complying with the federal rules, and that this commission had no intention of just trying to fine people for violations. And actually, Mr. Montoya, our chief of the Pipeline Bureau, told me that we try to work with companies, and the only time that he imposes a fine is when companies become recalcitrant and just in your face, will not work with this commission. And so we made the statement to a specific question that was asked by one of the representatives that it's not our general intention to impose fines, but to use fines as a mechanism to enforce compliance. And so although that's gas pipeline related, this is not. It seems that overarching principle is of importance to me, and that I would hope that we would be seen as a commission that is respected, that people will work with us, and that we're not going to use the heavy hand of government to just simply slap people around, but that we are willing to do so when they force that issue upon us. And I didn't see that type of activity here. So that's why I'm more in favor of not imposing the penalty. I think we received what the assurances we wanted, as I stated earlier. And so I would be reticent to send out a fine. And if we have a policy of fining everybody who doesn't comply with our rules, then I guess we'll make more money. But I'm not sure that's the reputation that this commission wants or needs.
Yeah, I hear that and I largely agree with it. What's lacking in this case, Commissioner Aguilera talked about all the spaghetti that got thrown at the wall, and some of it was pretty weak sauce, like the form doesn't work or employee screwed up, or but lacking in the positive assurances was any recognition that anybody else was harmed by the action, right? The argument is we self-reported, so that should be all it takes. and then that's another thing I liked about the design of staff's recommendation is, it's a relatively small penalty. So we're not making money off of this. But there's an amount held in abeyance. So it's like, well, repeated, if what you're trying to do doesn't fix the problem, there will be more money. And the other side of it is, like I said, lacking in all this was recognition that the actions on this 70 million worth of projects deprived somebody else of their ability to do their job. So, it's all and then on the self-reporting, yes, that's the right thing to do. Thank you for doing it. In this instance, there's also a much larger financial incentive for EPE to self-report than the penalty that we're talking about here. Because this 440 filings are going to get found out when you file a rate case. And if you go into a rate case with that kind of blemish on your copybook, you can't predict what that's going to do to your rate case. So it's better to clean up that kind of thing before you get to a rate case. And that's it. EP has accomplished that through this process. So yes, self-reporting, it's the right thing to do, should always happen. It's not the thing that gets me off of the idea that a penalty is warranted in this instance.
Well, I don't have any further comments. I mean, I guess I would entertain a motion if there is one.
I would say that you're the swing. You probably ought to make the motion which one you want. Because I'm happy, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to make my motion, but I'm not sure it'll pass. But if you want to go through those steps, I'll be happy to make the motion.
That's fair enough. In that case, I will move to adopt the order that issues a penalty as proposed by staff.
I second.
Commissioner Nyberg,
No.
Commissioner Aguilar,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Yes.
The motion to adopt the order, which was referred to by Mr. Waldrop as the second order, adopting staff's recommendation to issue the monetary penalty of $25,000, $15,000 to be held in abeyance, passes on a vote of 2 for and 1 against.
And probably should have asked for any further discussion before we voted, but I missed that step. I want to clarify also that the penalty here is not very large. I mean, essentially, if El Paso files their 440s consistently going forward, the fine would be $10,000. And so I wanted to clarify that because I don't think we've mentioned that for the benefit of those who have not been involved in this proceeding. So I think we're ready then to move on to the next item, also presented by Alyssa here, and this one is on docket number 2530, UT.
Thank you. This matter before you today, Commissioners, concerns SPS's request for approval of an accounting order. SPS seeks an accounting order to defer and track costs associated with the increase in its excess liability insurance premium, which has increased primarily due to evolving wildfire and storm risks, particularly in the West. SPS's excess liability insurance increased by $32 million between 2023 and 2024, when in the past it has been much lower, like 3 to 5 million. This matter was assigned to a hearing examiner, At the hearing, SPS staff and 2 interveners participated. Ultimately, the hearing examiner recommended approval of SPS's application. For a utility to obtain an accounting order, it must demonstrate that the issuance of the accounting order serves the public interest and that exceptional circumstances warrant issuing the order. Before you today is one order, which approves SPS's application and determines that issuing an accounting order to SPS serves the public interest, primarily because retaining insurance is necessary and expected of public utilities, regardless of the increase in cost. SPS has also satisfied the exceptional circumstances test, as the amount in consideration here is material. The increase in insurance costs were generally unplanned and beyond SPS's control, and the increase of this magnitude is abnormal. The order also addresses the exceptions filed by the parties in this matter. With that, I will stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, commissioners. Anybody want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll just say very interesting case. And again, one of my themes for today's meetings is thank you to hearing examiner Barrett and utility division staff. I think both did a really good job here. And so now that your proposal makes imminent sense to me. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, it's unfortunate that these issues are really at the forefront, not only in the territories of the public utilities that we oversee, but throughout the United States. And we've had a variety of workshops to deal with the underlying issue that's forcing these huge increases in insurance. And we know what can happen to a utility if they don't have insurance or they're underinsured, and the public certainly not served by that. And frankly, society and specifically the legislatures in each state are going to have to wrestle with these issues as to who should bear the cost of what has and is occurring throughout certainly the western states, and there's warnings that even the eastern states are having to face some of these issues. So dealing with this issue and the underlying issues is going to be a challenge, not only now but moving forward, until we see some clarity, maybe through legislation where the risk can actually be better calculated by insurance companies, and therefore maybe be able to moderate some of those costs, and also maybe putting limits on liability and other things that may impact the amount of money that's currently at risk with respect to these issues. So it's an important issue, not just for Southwestern Public Service Company, but basically every utility and probably every cooperative, and frankly, not just New Mexico, but all the western states and probably most of the United States.
Thank you for the discussion on that. And also thank you, as Commissioner O'Connell said, to the hearing examiner and staff for their work on this. I don't have any further discussion. So with that, I will move to adopt the order before us on this item.
Second.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilar,
Yes.
Commissioner Nyberg.
Yes.
The motion to approve the order before you in 25-00030-UT passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Once again, we have Ms. Alyssa to present the next item, which is docket number 2559 UT. This is the fifth item on our regular action agenda. Floor is still yours.
Thank you. This matter before you today, Commissioners, concerns PNM's request for approval of an accounting order. PNM seeks an accounting order in this matter to track deferred investments and expenditures related to PNM joining the Extended Day Ahead Market, or EDAM. This matter had several interveners, some which support the application and some which ask for denial of the application. For a utility to obtain an accounting order, similar to the SPS matter, it must demonstrate that the issuance of the accounting order serves the public interest and that exceptional circumstances warrant issuing the order. Before you today is one order which approves PNM's application and determines that issuing an accounting order to PNM serves the public interest, primarily because utilities joining regional markets likely has an economic benefit to New Mexico ratepayers, has the potential to assist New Mexico in improving grid reliability and also reaching emission reduction targets. Additionally, PNM has shown an accounting order is warranted because joining a regional market like EDAM is an abnormal and exceptional circumstance. The order also asserts that it is reasonable for PNM to expend funds in joining EDAM in this matter. Before standing for questions, I want to note that Commission staff filed a motion for surreply, in which I believe the chair has some comments on. So, Mr. Chair, I will hand it over to you or otherwise stand for questions on this order. Thank you.
Thank you. And on this last issue, I have some suggested edits to the order. So staff filed a motion for surreply, and I think staff raises valid issues that would merit a response to clarify. So staff is asserting here that a finding that it is reasonable for PNM to expend funds to join EDAM is essentially making a finding that the funds are prudent. So I appreciate staff's concern here, and in the interest of protecting customers, I do think there is a difference between finding that it is reasonable to expend the funds than finding whether the amount of the funds is prudent. And I think in order to, and so the document that I just gave you includes a paragraph that would essentially grant staff surreply and respond to it. And I think one thing that makes this item unique, especially compared to a similar filing that we had years ago to join, where PNM was asking for the same treatment with respect to the Western Energy Imbalance Market, is that for this item, we held a lengthy and detailed proceeding that involved a lot of stakeholders discussing what stakeholders, the commission, utilities care about when we're thinking about whether to join a regional market and which one. And we have all of that background, and PNM conducted studies on the issue and conducted studies to determine which market would provide the most economic benefits for its ratepayers. And so it's not like a rash decision that they're making. I thought that they are presenting evidence that is responsive to the commission's questions that it had asked throughout the proceeding and provided valid responses to those questions. And so I wanted to respond to staff's motion because I do believe that it is reasonable for PNM to expend the funds to join EDAM. I also don't think that we're making a prudency determination as to the amount itself. And there's a small nuance there, but wanted to distinguish this case from the previous case. So the paragraph before you does that. And there are some other edits. I only gave you 2 pages, but there are some other edits in the decretal paragraph that would just change denies the cert reply to granting it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And listening to you and reading this, I agree with your approach of responding to staff. It's funny because I was a proponent for putting this case on consent agenda because it's an accounting order and really the outcome of it is valuable, right? It just sequesters some costs in an account so that when we're in the future thinking about cost benefit, we actually have the costs in an account. So it's easier to look at a cost benefit. I mean, to me, it's kind of nuts that this case became a referendum on market choice, or parties tried to make it so, especially parties that come to us and say, leave us alone. So what are they doing? Not leaving other people alone, you know, it was just bizarre. So anyway, thank you, Alyssa. We didn't have a hearing examiner. You got to manage a lot of things that were, I think, extraneous to the question that was asked. And I agree, all we're doing is saying, hey, collect these costs in a place where they're easy to inspect. One of the things that's an outcome of easy to inspect is it'll be easier to determine P&M actually used best efforts to make sure the money they spent was prudent, right? So it improves that situation if we approve the accounting order rather than is some rip at the fabric of regulation, you know? So anyway, I know you had to navigate a lot. I appreciate what the chair's done here today. So I'm in favor of this.
Mr. Chair, I'm having trouble grasping that if we find that the expenditure of such funds are reasonable, how can we later deny the reasonable expenditure of funds?
Right now, we have estimated costs, and we don't know what the actual amounts are. So the distinction that I'm making in this case is that the actual funds, P&M still needs to prove that they were prudently incurred. And I'll note that we do this sometimes when we approve procurements, whether it's the resource procurements or sometimes like in the grid modernization, we've approved the idea that they're going to spend a certain amount of funds, but then later they have to come back and show that those funds are prudent and we make a just and reasonable determination on the actual funds.
Yeah, and I guess as a realistic matter, how do we not approve those funds if we deemed them to be reasonable from the beginning? Because those fees are going to be incurred not at prices that P&M sets. Those prices are going to be incurred as a result of the entire process that EDAM's going through, and they'll be required, if I view it right, they'll be required of P&M to bear those costs to join that market. And so they have no choice. They either join the market and incur the cost, or in my view, they may be in a world of hurt because they're not going to have the marketplace that they thought they might have. So it seems to me that if it's reasonable, they're going to have to bear whatever costs are foisted upon them, and we would be hard pressed to not find those costs that have actually been incurred to be a prudent expenditure of funds at that point in time. So I was fine with the order as it was written, which actually denied staff's motion to file the surreply and avoid the issue altogether. Basically, make the finding that it's reasonable and telling P&M to go forward through the process, and that hopefully they would be able to rely upon us to recognize that the entire West is facing similar issues, and it's, in my view, inevitable that utilities are going to have to move in one direction or another. The days of self-generation for your entire footprint, those days are gone, and that's not what's happening in the West. There's going to be little choice. They're going to have to join one of the other markets, and there'll be costs associated with each. P&M's chosen to go with EDAM, and I'm not going to run the utility. That's a reasonable choice on their part, and this order finds that they're acting reasonably, and I agree with that and support it. I just am having trouble making a finding that those expenditures of funds are reasonable, account for them in this method, but yet when they make those expenditures, we get a second bite at the apple and could say, no, I just don't see that being reasonable.
I think the argument that you made as to what P&M will say later about they didn't have a choice, I think that's, as to what the costs are, I think that's probably what they're going to say. I will note that this paragraph actually does nothing different than the way the order was already written. In fact, it takes the language about finding that it is reasonable for P&M to expend funds to join EDAM verbatim from a previous paragraph. And so really what I'm adding here is a response that further explains what is already in the draft. And the reason why we're making that distinction is given the lengthy history that we have in the related proceeding, where the commission issued a statement of policy and guidance principles to consider joining regional markets. So the finding in this paragraph is taken from a previous paragraph that was already in the draft.
If I might, that was part of why I was very appreciative of what Hearing Examiner Barrett did in the SPS case, is she described the concept as a pure accounting order, and what does that mean, and what does it confer, and what doesn't it confer. And so what I see is this is an example of H.E. Barrett's pure accounting order, just in a different case. And just to pile on some more, I'd like to see EPE ask for an accounting order for their decision, because I'm more concerned about cost of entry there than with the EDAM, because we've been through the CAISO process once before and we kind of know what it looks like. My understanding with the Markets Plus is it's more of a vendor funded thing, and I don't know how that's going to work in terms of getting consumers benefits quickly. So an accounting order helps see that. So
I guess I'm hung up on paragraph 36, the third line. To be clear, the commission does not find in this order that the amount of funds or the funds expended is prudent. then it goes on, and then later on, it says the general idea to determine prudency in a later proceeding is not novel, and goes on to say that we'll, I guess, address those issues in the future. I know we will address those issues in the future, but I thought the whole purpose of this order was to find the P&M. We find it to be reasonable that you move forward on this. Please keep an accounting ledger on the costs that's associated with it. And if that's a reasonable action, I just think that we're going to be hard pressed. I mean, we can put it in the order, but I would feel hard pressed to say that later on, those reasonable costs that were incurred are not prudent. I don't see how that works.
Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from. Would it work for you to delete that sentence and then the word however, and then just start with based on the record?
I think that would be helpful. Because that's actually what does occur. We would have to approve the cost in a later proceeding. And that sentence, if I were P&M, I'd be a little disturbed by it, because it, you know, to be clear, the commission does not find in this order that the amount of funds expended is prudent. You know, we're going to have to find them to be prudent, but I mean, again, if we're finding it's reasonable, it's going to be hard to go back on that. So I would say if you strike that sentence and the word however, and start the next sentence with just based on the record, you probably get what you needed, and you address maybe my major concern, and that's sending two messages.
Okay.
Commissioners, if I may, I do want to say, I do think there's a difference between reasonable and prudency here. And I understand the reasoning for putting it in this paragraph. I did want to note that with the additions, there's also a footnote that says the commission reserves its right to determine whether the relevant funds are deemed prudent for recovery in a future rate case. So this theme does appear elsewhere in the order. I just want to confirm, I believe that statement is true, primarily first because PNM has asked for this accounting order so quickly, and the commission has been accommodating. These costs particularly haven't been reviewed for prudency like they would at the level of a rate case. So I do think it's accurate to say that, but given the nature of this conversation, I just wanted to clarify whether we should be keeping that in as well.
You might want to look at toning it down a little bit.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Maybe not being as, I don't see the language, but.
Oh, I see. Just
maybe
toning.
softening the language.
I apologize. I thought you were talking about my statement. So, but
Oh, no.
So apologies.
Softening the language in the footnote, because I'm not seeing what you're referring to.
I think it was originally footnote 90, and then with the addition, it's been moved down to 92. So, but we can work on modifying that.
I think footnote 90 in the original, the commission reserves its right to determine whether the relevant funds are deemed prudent for recovery in a future rate case. Probably I'll say that the commission will have to determine whether the funds are deemed prudent for recovery in a future rate case. Reserving the right, again, kind of gets to my mind, a shot across the bow, but
Yeah, I think that addition or revision is fine with me. I think we're talking about two concepts that are very similar. I think I understand where we are on this. Okay, so with that, then I will move to adopt the order as has been revised to add paragraph 36, as has been further revised in this discussion to remove a sentence and also to revise what was old footnote 90 to say the commission will have to determine.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
And
the commission must determine.
or the commission must determine. And so that's my motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Any discussion?
Commissioner Nyberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Yes, and I really appreciate everything Alyssa said today.
The
Thank you,
motion-
Commissioners.
The motion to adopt the order in 25-00059-UT, the revised order that revises paragraph 36 and also revises footnote 90 passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So the next item is 2566 UT, and this one is presented by Mr. Robert Lundin. Before we get started, want to check with the commissioners to see if you need a break at all. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. Sorry, Mr. Lundin, to make you come up. I think this one, I don't know how long it's going to take, but we still have a few more items after regular action. But I think it's a good time for a break. So let's come back at 11:55. All right. I think we have who we need back to get started. So we'll get started. And once again, we're on to item 6, which is 2566 UT. Mr. Robert Lundin is here to present. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. On September 25th, SPS filed an application requesting approval of 6 CCNs for solar, wind, and natural gas generation resources, 2 CCNs for battery storage resources, and 3 CCNs for transmission lines. In addition, location and right-of-way approval, rate-making principles, variances, and determinations related to the REA and RPS. SPS also requested expedited treatment and a 6-month procedural schedule, which was noted to be opposed by staff and various stakeholders. A few days thereafter, the Commission issued a procedural order that required deadlines for party positions on the application, a statement of contested and uncontested issues from the parties, and a recommended decision that would facilitate a decision in approximately 6 months. After the procedural order was issued, the opposed stakeholders filed motions to intervene and a joint motion for reconsideration of the SSO on due process grounds. Today, I prepared for your consideration an order that would deny the joint motion for reconsideration. As I noted in the order, there are 2 independent arguments presented as options for your choosing, one procedural and one substantive. But before I turn it over, I want to mention a late filing made yesterday afternoon by the New Mexico Large Customer Group that provides relevant information. And that was teed up for you by public comment earlier this morning by the counselor from ConocoPhillips. NMLCG notes that it does not oppose the procedural schedule, but it wanted to bring to the Commission's attention what is occurring in Texas. As a multi-jurisdictional utility, SPS must attain approval in both Texas and New Mexico before it builds system resources. As such, SPS has a similar application pending before the Texas Commission. In that application, SPS also requested a 6-month procedural schedule. NMLCG provided the Texas Commission's most recent order, which states that some parties to the case also oppose the 6-month schedule, and all of the parties, including SPS, were close to reaching an agreement on a 9-month procedural schedule. The Texas Commission ordered that all parties must file their proposed procedural schedules by close of business today, and noted that a potential evidentiary hearing could be held in February 2026. So as you know, an important consideration in setting a 6-month procedural schedule in the construction, is the construction start dates and the in-service start dates for the resources in SPS's application. SPS's ability to start construction on any projects that may be approved is limited by how long it takes for them to receive regulatory approvals in both jurisdictions. If Texas will be taking 9 months, that in theory may lessen this Commission's desire to act sooner. But it should also be noted that the 2 solar projects, Oneida 2 and Sandy Loam, are proposed as New Mexico dedicated resources. SPS withdrew Oneida 2 from its application in Texas. I'm uncertain of the status of Sandy Loam in Texas, but both projects are proposed to be built in Texas. And that is all I have to say. So I can stand for questions.
Thank you for that presentation. I wanted to, I guess, address a few larger issues. I think the first one, one of the arguments in the motion opposing the response opposing the extension is that the commissioner did not have authority to issue the order. And I just wanted to, I don't agree. I think it's a procedural order. And I certainly agree that the commissioner here had the authority to issue the order. I do want to note that there probably could have been a better approach for us to do here. I think in the past, when we received a motion for expedited treatment, we shortened the comment period on that motion, considered the response, considered the request, and then issued an order with a decision on whether to grant that expedited action or not. Or maybe not even, if we intended to make some kind of finding on it. And so I think that would have been an ideal approach here. I also understand that this order was thinking about a larger issue, that we have a lot of resource procurements, and I think there is a desire from the commission to act sooner on these. And on the other hand, this is a very large filing. Maybe this one wasn't the right one to start that with. But we have the current situation that we have now. I want to express my thoughts that I agree with the sentiment of acting sooner on this case. I think one of the themes that we've been talking about is the credits that are expiring for certain renewable energy resources. And I do think it is prudent for us to consider those deadlines in these cases, because it means that the resources that the utilities are procuring on behalf of the customers are going to be less expensive. And so for those particular items, I do feel a certain urgency to act and provide a decision so that we can avail ourselves of any tax credits that are out there. Well, I think I'll stop there and see what comments the other commissioners have. I do have comments about the draft order that we have before us, but I think we could maybe get to those as we continue this conversation. To kind of summarize what I came in thinking is that this is not like any other filing. I think there are valid reasons why the joint movements, I think, I don't remember what they call themselves, the joint movements are arguing here that they need more time. And I'm inclined to provide more time because I agree. I also want to balance that with the desire to act more quickly, not just in this filing, but in the CCN cases in general.
Yeah, I think what I was going to say is just an extension of what you just said. Is broadly, my experience has been, if you've got a question that needs to be answered, the best thing to do is hear the case. So dismissal is a high bar. Almost never will it be the right answer. Having said that, there is a sense of urgency for many reasons to get resources approved in the moment we're in right now. I've said this a few times before, but if you want to go far, go together. So if you're going to throw a dog's breakfast filing, get some buy off on the questions before you file it. So that's the complicating factor here. So we'll see where this case goes. And the last thing is again, going back to one of the things that we've been pushing as a improvement internally is, if you're going to ask for more time, you got to earn it. You don't ask for it on the first day. You try and then prove to me why you need it. So broadly, those are just my thought process before I even looked at the motion to dismiss and the argument. So I'm not trying to underestimate the arguments that have been made, but I just think in this moment, the right thing to do is proceed in some fashion.
Mr. Chair, I just comment that I think increasingly we are going to be under the gun and asked to expedite agency review of matters that come before us. Certainly, there's going to be some potential pressure from the executive that is going to want some things fast-tracked. I think we've seen that talking to Secretary Black yesterday. There may be some things coming our way that I know they will want addressed quickly, and the agency, we have to go through procedures. Procedures mean time, but I suspect that we're going to be under more and more pressure to deal with things on a more urgent basis, because frankly, the utility business is moving a lot faster now than it has in decades. Some of that because of demand, other issues because of other issues that they're facing. So, you know, in my mind, 6 months, 9 months may have been the norm. We're going to get pushed to get things out quickly. And the idea of maybe rate cases taking a couple years is probably not going to be something that we can do in the future. We're going to have to act more quickly. So I just, you know, I think it's important for us to try to do things expeditiously as possible. 6 months seems to be, you know, part of it was our idea that we needed to have a decision within a 6 month time frame. That means other things have to happen before that. We could build in some additional time to the parties if we heard it directly. There may be some options that we have available to us to give them more time and still meet what I perceive as our deadline. And maybe instead of having 2 hearing examiners going through it, maybe the commission ought to have a hearing examiner to help us conduct the case. But we hear it. If that'll cut down a month, then that might be some direction that we ought to do in this case. But we're going to be under the gun to do this probably more frequently than we have in the past. Would be my observation.
Yeah, and you know, our chief of staff recently presented the amount of time that it's been taking us on some of these cases, which we have drastically reduced. And I think that's a great thing. The other thing that we need to balance is, as you mentioned, we're also expecting significant other requests that have a 6 month statutory deadline that could be extended. So maybe I didn't phrase that correctly, but those are all proceedings that we're going to be working on at the same time with the resources that we have. And as I said, I feel the urgency for several reasons. You know, as I've mentioned in the past, I don't want this agency to get in the way of economic development. That's certainly something that I will keep repeating and truly believe. I also know that we need to do a proper evaluation, and staff needs time, the interveners need time, and the utility needs time. And we're going to have a lot going on in the next few months. I'm bracing myself for it. And I think that we will be able to handle all of the work in a timely manner But I'm just wondering here whether 6 months is the right time. And, I'll just put it out there. I think the SSO said that we intended to act by March 25th, 24th, 26th, somewhere around there. I'm not remembering the exact date. But I think in this case, given the magnitude of the case, 1 or 2 months in addition to that would benefit the interveners and staff, and also make sure that we all are able to do the work that we need to do in this evaluation and remain sane.
I didn't know sanity was a right, but yeah, and then that to me, the most disturbing thing was joint motion showed that SPS hadn't done the legwork to try to get people at least understanding of what it is they were going to ask for before they asked for it. So that hopefully can happen still. So appreciate the comment and that we got this morning that and so hopefully SPS is working with their customers and the folks who have interest in this case to resolve this thing, resolve the schedule, but knowing that we're in a world where we need resources for electricity to flow. So.
Well, we need the resources, and particularly in southern Eddy and Lee County, trying to alleviate some of that with transmission projects that's under construction right now, that NextEra transmission line, but that's only going to move electrons. We need generation of electrons, and that's what I see is being proposed here. And the sooner we get those on the system, the more of that demand can be met. And frankly, it's one that has a lot of upside, not only for the customers that are demanding the energy, but also environmental reasons. This is a lot cleaner energy than the natural gas and diesel generators that are being utilized right now to power the oil and gas assets in southern Eddy and Lee County. But there's those benefits, and of course the oil and gas industry is trying to deal with the emissions issue, and it would certainly help them with the emissions issues if they could purchase electricity off the grid from these types of projects instead of having to generate the electricity themselves on location. So there's a lot of benefits for these assets to be online, and the sooner they get online, the better. The sooner that transmission line gets completed, the better. But those are the challenges that are before us, and time is critical. And 6 months, 7 months, I know some of the lawyers out there work nights. It's just part of the job. So I think most things we do ought to be capable of being done in 6 months. People may not like it, but people wait for deadlines to do things. It's a natural tendency, not just in the legislature, but everywhere. And so having a 6-month deadline, I suspect that you'll have the same issues if you extend it to 7 months or 8 months or 9 months. So pick your day, and let's get this thing moving forward.
So I'm looking forward to your comments on the draft order.
I think the draft that we have right now kind of puts its foot down and disagrees with the arguments that the joint movements are making. I agree with some of the arguments that they are making. I also think that the draft doesn't address section 12212C1 of our rules, which allows parties 13 days to respond to a motion, and make some arguments that takes a tack that I don't agree with necessarily. I'd rather admit that we could have taken a better approach here by shortening the comment period, considering the comments, considering the request. And who knows, maybe we still would have ended up on the same discussion. I do agree with a comment that SPS makes in its motion that at this point, the joint movements have had an opportunity to explain their concerns. And so I think we are in a situation where we can consider their viewpoints and consider the request adequately, because we have the information to make a decision, and we have even if we didn't take exactly the ideal steps, we have that information now, and we have time to correct it. So that's how I would respond to it. There are some novel requests in this proceeding that are significant and people will care about, and depending on what decision the commission makes on those in responding to those questions, they could be appealed. And I mean, this case is a big deal, right? And so I don't think that taking an additional 2 months when we really, for many of these requests, we have 15 months. If we do it in 8 months, I think that's still a lot better and gives people the opportunity to do the job that they need to do to make sure that they're providing us the information that we need to make the right decisions. So I would take a different approach to responding to it. And I think I've said this a few times. I think if we took 8 months instead of 6, it would be better for this proceeding. After considering the joint movements arguments and the request by the utility here. And again, we still have, for some of these resources, we still have the same question about tax credits, right? But we don't have all of the information because we could take eight months with it, and the utility could say, well, that's not going to give us enough time to start construction, but maybe you can still complete it by the alternative deadline that would allow the resources to qualify for credits. That's all I have.
Yeah, so are you saying that we should issue an order that changes the time to 8 months?
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to get there yet, because I still think there's a step that SPS skipped, which was actually working with their customers and the interveners on what they're asking for. You know, they've got some things that are just clearly 6-month requests. And then they've got some things where they're asking us that have implications beyond SPS, you know, so is that needed to provide service to their customers, or is that something SPS wants, right? So if you need the 6 months, make your application fit into the 6-month time frame to get maximize that. So they haven't done that. And that's what the breadth of this group of joint parties tells me. And so I think if I'd like to see that happen before I extend the time. And then SPS, it's like a rate case, right? If you don't heed what is being said here, you may very well not like the outcome of this case. If you're going to play brinksmanship, you might lose everything. So that's why I'm okay with 6 months, but I also will bet that we'll get to 8 months by the time we're done.
In my view, the customers of SPS have been demanding energy for 40-some months now that hasn't been delivered. And so the customers need and have needed that energy for now over 3 years. So people say, well, it's just a delay. I mean, yeah, it's a delay, but there's been a huge delay already. And a lot of that was the transmission process. But the fact of the matter is the demand requires prompt action. The demand requires that SPS do everything within its power to try to meet the customers who are asking for service that they can't supply. And so for me, the customers, they're the ones putting pressure on the utility to get service. And I'm somewhat sympathetic to.
Yeah, what's confusing to me about that is the parties who have asked are opposing this 6-month schedule include SPS's customers.
Well, we heard from one earlier today that's also supportive of the 6-month timeline,
And that just highlights the need for SPS to do a little lead work that they skipped.
The other issue that isn't raised or isn't discussed, it's raised in the order. When parties decide to intervene in a case, they know what the roadmap was. And in this case, the roadmap was already there when their request for intervention came in. They knew what those deadlines were. So they knew the procedural order from the get-go. I guess one could argue that there wasn't much time between the initial filing and that order and the hearing examiner's order. But the fact of the matter is, when they chose to intervene in the case, the roadmap to get from point A to point B was already laid out. And there's some merit to I think that idea that people who intervene in a case, that they should take the case as it's set at the time that they intervene, and there's some merit for that rule to be enforced. But anyway.
Yeah, and that's one of the arguments in the draft that I don't agree with. The roadmap is set, but they have an opportunity they're entitled to seek a change from that roadmap because they intend to meaningfully participate. And yeah, it's a tricky argument because it's essentially saying, well, you knew what you were getting into, but we never gave them the opportunity to be involved in that discussion. when, as I mentioned, our rules contemplate that they're allowed to be involved in responding to motions.
I guess my response is, shouldn't it be their burden to prove the elements as to why the time period that's been set is unreasonable or is not possible? Should they not bear the burden of establishing why that procedural schedule is not realistic?
I'm persuaded. And so I agree with you that they should. I am persuaded. I think there are another argument that I think is valid here is that all of these questions don't necessarily have to be answered together at the same time. And part of the urgency that I feel is what you have also explained, Commissioner Nyber, that the customers here in this region will benefit from utility scale power because of the emissions and also because of the cost. It is more cost effective to use the utility scale power, and the emissions are also a consideration here, as you've mentioned. And so do we need to answer all of these questions now to achieve that goal of, helping this region? Or is there a way to bifurcate some of the request in this application to be able to meet that, but also allow time for due diligence on all of these requests?
It seems to me that if what we need to do is, if you're suggesting we move the date that we wish to decide the matter from 6 months to something greater than 6 months, that we ought to just simply inform the hearing examiner of our desire to move that date and request the hearing examiner to set a new schedule based upon that new timeline. We don't need to get into the weeds of the hearing examiner schedule. We just need to reflect a revision as to when we need to make our decision. And as I mentioned earlier, we could cut some time off if we heard it directly, instead of adding that extra month or so for hearing examiner to do a record of decision, a recommended decision, get it to Office of General Counsel to review for, that takes what, a month or so. If we heard it directly, we could cut off some time there too. But I know our schedule's been busy without doing that, but there's some other things that we could possibly do to deal with the increasing the time that the parties actually have to review the application and come up with the testimony and conduct their hearing. So.
I'll just collect where I'm at the moment is, this thing's infected by, we know what we don't know, similar to some of the other cases. Things are changing in Texas. Does no good to have half an approval. They need Texas and New Mexico to say yes. So I also think whatever we do here today is not the last thing we're gonna do in terms of calendar on this case, no matter, you know, when I play out the scenarios. So to me, the safe thing to do is let's just keep the schedule at the application. We know, or, you know, I guess what we're really doing is just denying the motion. And then I think point's well made, this infamous SSO, it says we will endeavor to do it in 6 months. If we're convinced that we can't, I think that's something we can work with the hearing examiner on. The SSO gives that opportunity. But before I do that, I would like SPS to communicate clearly what the schedule is in Texas and work with the parties in their case and maybe clarify what it is they're asking for. Because if they're asking for the moon, that's part of why their 6 months is hard to say yes to. But just where are we at right now? Keep the pressure on SPS to clarify in New Mexico what's going on in Texas, what the implication for that is with their case. That might help us map out a schedule that gets these things decided timely.
So would the motion that you're suggesting would be to approve the order denying motion in docket number 2566-UT at this time? Or is it something different?
Well, I also agree with what Commissioner Aguilera was saying is just the club tone of the motion might not communicate the right thing, because I agree with some of the arguments the joint movements are making. Really, my position is the best way to know my answer to their argument is let's hear the case. So I didn't want to get in the way of that. We've got a case, it's got a schedule. So that's really what I want to communicate. It could be the words of this order denying motion are get in the way of that communication, but I find it hard to edit things for tone and those kind of things. So,
Well,
I guess if I'm going to vote right now, it'd be the order denying the motion, knowing that it's not the best communication tool. If we got a way to fix that, like what happens if we take no action? It just is denied.
Commissioner, our rules don't contemplate motions for reconsideration, but in the past, the commission has held that motions for reconsideration are treated as rehearing, which means they are denied by operation of law after 20 days, hence why we've put this on the 16th and dealt with it quickly. That deadline, I believe, is October 23rd. However, an order could issue today that plainly says the commission grants rehearing and reserves its right to explain its order at a later time. That's what we've done in the past when the commission has required more time to develop an order.
Mr. Chair, I didn't quite understand if we're talking about denying the motion, why would we grant the rehearing and then do nothing?
Yeah, I mean, if the intent is to deny the motion, then it wouldn't make sense to reserve more time. And I don't know if that would be possible because of the operation, the statutory mechanism would deny it on the 23rd.
Mr. Chair, if Commissioner O'Connell wants this to be worded differently, I guess I would volunteer to work with Mr. Lundin in coming up with a order denying the motion and maybe have a fairly short and simplified motion denying or order denying this motion. And it sounds to me like we probably do need to communicate with the hearing examiners and address maybe some of our concerns so that the hearing examiner understands that if push comes to shove, that our 6-month imposed deadline may be softer than what they think it is right now.
Well, I think we're in the territory of how Mr. Lundin designed this document. There's two different reasons for denying, right? There's procedural and there's persuasion, right? And that was kind of your, if I understood it correctly, your suggestion was if we want to just go procedural, it's an easy edit on the order you proposed. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, the intent there was to provide the commission with options. So you can choose one or the other, both, neither. But yeah, it's meant to be editable, so you can delete spots of it if you wish.
Okay, so as long as that's what you're offering to do is just boil it down to procedural, then it's good to have commissioner working with OGC, so OGC has the clear line of vision to move forward on that, but.
And as I understand it, the real part that does not merit a discussion in this would be the portion that discusses that the parties were interveners and they, I guess, dial back on the part that says they knew what the schedule was when they intervened, not address that, just dismiss it for general reasons, or procedural reasons, not get into that issue.
Yeah, that's my understanding, rather than take a position at all on the arguments that were made, just go down the procedural track, because then, like I say, we got to deal with the motion, but this is the beginning of the story, not the end.
And Mr. Chair, I'll move that we adopt an order denying the motion, and that I will work with Mr. Lundin in coming up with appropriate language to put in that order, and we will take out the portion in the motion that's before us that deals with the issue of the status of the interveners at the time that the procedural order was entered.
Yeah, I just want to circle back around with Commissioner Aguilera. You agree that procedurally the order, scheduling order and assigning of the hearing examiner was correct. That was something I thought I heard, but.
Well, I agree that the commissioner has authority under our rules to issue a procedural schedule. I mean, I think this is the circumstance that can happen sometime, is we shorten a deadline and other parties disagree. And I think that we sometimes might go back on what on that procedural order that we issued via single signature order. I think that's a fine outcome, because I think we gain a lot of efficiencies by allowing ourselves to, as a single commissioner, set procedural deadlines. If we have to wait in each docket to set those, to come to the whole commission to set those deadlines, that's inefficient. And so I agree that we should retain this practice of setting issuing procedural orders via single signature order. So I don't have a concern with that at all.
Yeah, no, I understand you have other concerns and you might not support the motion. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that piece of it was loud and clear, because and I'll also add to it, just reminder, that wasn't Commissioner Nybert's order. We have a calendar set up, so it was his month, right? I would have signed the same thing. So it's a procedural thing, but.
Yes, yeah, so we switch each month which commissioner has the single signature orders. And so it's not that Commissioner Nyberg brought this to staff and then issued it. It's just that they brought it to him because it was his turn.
Fine here.
And so, you know, I would just caution, the joint movements to me here appear to be making a case for due process. We don't want to end up in a situation where, let's say for the sake of argument, we agree with many of SPS's requests and then we're overturned because of due process. And that's also part of what I'm trying to solve. I think that if we it's somehow we have to clarify that we have now had an opportunity to listen to both sides. I don't agree with putting our foot down and just dismissing their concerns on just procedural grounds, because for one, I am persuaded. Two, I do think that we should have taken a different approach here. And I think that there is an opportunity to admit here, hey, we should have taken a different approach, but now we've had an opportunity to hear you out. And we still believe, after considering your comments, that 6 months is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I very much appreciate you saying that, because I mean, big picture, it might dent my ego if I lost this case on appeal on due process, but the real who loses out is SPS's customers. So that's why I keep encouraging SPS to, now that they've seen what the concerns are with their application, try to fix it. Because if that scenario plays out, the loser won't be me. I mean, the loser will be me as a citizen of New Mexico, but the first most dire impact will be on SPS's customers.
Well, I think also maybe SPS in its discussions with the intervening parties, if they recognize that maybe they could afford a little more time, sounds to me like that might be something that they need to bring to our attention, and we could communicate to the hearing examiner, maybe extending our 6-month imposed deadline and allowing a little more time. So maybe the utility and the intervening parties can come up with a agreed upon schedule that may differ from the hearing examiner's schedule that's currently before them.
Okay, so I'm kind of lost here. Just do we have a motion on the floor?
It's lacking a second.
Okay.
You have a motion.
You want to reframe the motion to include Commissioner Aguilera's edit, that we make it clear that we have heard what people are saying here?
Yeah,
does that need to be said?
write that down.
Yeah, does Robert have that on his notes, I guess? All right, then.
That's fine.
All right, if you don't want to clarify, yeah, I think we're okay. I'll second.
And I would say if Commissioner Aguilera wants to look at the work product before we finalize it, that'd be great. Both of you have to look at it before.
I actually need some further clarification before I vote here. Can someone sum it up for me?
Well, let me give you my version, and because is Robert and Commissioner Nyberg are gonna take the draft and boil it down to the procedural argument. and then include in the procedural argument that with the process that was followed, the joint movements have been heard. So that's my understanding of where we're at, but.
And then, Mr. Lundin, can you explain what the procedural discussion in the draft would be?
Chairman, I don't know that I can, because I think there's not a meeting of the minds here where Commissioner O'Connell is talking about boiling this down to the procedural argument, but that a lot of the criticisms that I've heard so far have been about the procedural argument. So I'm not sure. And then the second half is all the substantive argument around the due process claim. I'm not sure if that's, I guess, now excluded, but like I said, I don't know if I could dictate to you what that argument would be as of right now.
The danger of me not being a lawyer.
I think we can take out all of the portion of the order that deals with the fact that the intervening parties, who are the joint movements, that they're, the argument is that they were subject to the order that was already entered, and they took it procedurally at that moment in time. We'll take all that stuff out.
Okay.
We'll leave in the other procedural aspects and address the due process arguments, but try to do it in a shorter fashion.
In an attempt to simplify it, section 1B of the draft would probably be excised.
Yes.
1B.
I think on page 4.
Okay. There is a summary of the argument, paragraph 18. It says the joint motion argues that the commission had a duty to allow the parties that noted opposition to the expedited motion an adequate opportunity to assert and explain their opposition and propose alternatives before issuing an order. I agree, because of section 122.12C1 in our rules. I think the parties here had a reasonable expectation that they would have 13 days to respond to the motion. And that's why I think that the right course of action should have been to shorten that comment period, consider the comments, and then make a decision on whether we're going to explain that we intend to issue an order by a certain date. The arguments that follow this summary to me say there is that rule, but the commission has discretion to deviate from it. And I don't disagree necessarily, but I don't think that's how we should operate. I think that if we have a rule that allows parties time to respond, we should then give them that time to respond or shorten that time to respond and tell them that we're shortening it. So I think that's why for me, I think they have a good point, and I would say you're right. We should have shortened the comment period. Regardless of that, we do now have your responses, and we are considering them. And this is the decision that we're making. So I think even, if the commission as a whole agrees to retain this 6-month deadline, I think the commission has discretion to make that decision. And although I would prefer to provide more time, I think that it is within the commission's discretion to say that we want to act within 6 months, and that I could get behind. But I think some of these arguments, then the way that we're making them, I really can't. So I think maybe if it makes it more clear, I would agree with the joint movements and still decide the same outcome.
And I think we've established that we've wrestled with the arguments they've made. We spent some time discussing their arguments, the merits thereof. We'd still like to hold the 6-month timeframe, but I think everybody's heard that we're softer than maybe what the original order reflects on that. So I think Mr. Lundin and I can get to that point. And we'll run it by you.
I've said too much. So where are we at?
Did we get a second on the motion?
We did.
Okay.
Commissioner O'Connell seconded Commissioner Nybert's original motion.
Yeah, and then my understanding is we then had a good conversation clarifying the instructions to Mr. Lundin that were embedded in the motion.
Ready to vote? Commissioner Nybert?
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilera?
Yes, and I will likely have a concurring statement explaining my vote.
Commissioner O'Connell?
Yes.
The motion to approve the order in 25-00066-UT as lengthily amended and as will be worked on between Commissioner Nybert and OGC Lundin passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. See, aren't you glad we had that 10-minute break? Okay. So we only have a couple more items. And I understand that we don't have any communications with the Chief of Staff. Is that correct for today? We have time.
We should go back to the cheeseburger. Or we get to cheeseburgers while you're saying.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Nope. This one? Better. All right, I'll be brief. Much of what I have to tell you sounds a little bit like a broken record, but I just want to reiterate a couple of things. The first is The Melody Ranch water situation is never far from our minds. Staff is working on that literally every day. I just met with a team of PRC staff members looking at all available options, whole of government type approach. So we are trying to find ways to make things happen there, not just with the adjudication and what you all have in front of you, but also with the emergency nature of the situation and the lack of water supply there. So I just wanted to assure you and everybody who's watching that that is first and foremost on our mind with that situation. Secondly, I will remind you that we have our capital outlay hearing tomorrow at 1:30. That is for our $5 million request to build a hearing room, hopefully much like this, in our future home at the, I think it's called the Philip Gonzalez Building is like the official title of the building, but I keep calling it the ERB building because ERB is still not out. So tomorrow, 1:30, $5 million request in front of the capital outlay or for the capital outlay. And then last but not least, a reminder that our annual CLE, it'll be our third annual CLE or seminar, is happening on the 1st and 2nd of December. And I'm excited to see those panels coming together. Reminder that the topic is innovation in regulation, which hopefully is a timely topic and people are getting excited about. So with that, I stand for questions.
Thank you for that presentation. I don't have any questions. Commissioners, any questions? No, thank you. Okay, one more item before we adjourn. That's communications with commissioners. So I attended the Northwestern Institute for Regulatory Law and Economics training in Colorado, and that was from it was class all day Thursday, all day Friday, all day Saturday. We got like 3 hours of a break on Sunday and then went back at it Monday morning. So it was a lot, but it was very beneficial. We had professors from different universities come together and speak to regulators, some commissioners, some executive or senior staff from various regulatory commissions from across the country, and talked about economic theory, went back to the basics of regulation and how we got to the paradigm that we have today, and also had some good refresher courses on finance, and also some discussion about the legal paradigm that we have in today's regulatory environment. So I thought it was very beneficial. It also is a NARUC endorsed course that qualifies me to get the education credit that I have to get under the statute. So that was really good. I don't think I have any other announcements. Commissioners?
I won't belabor the point, but I attended the same course with Commissioner Aguilera and can confirm that it was excellent and has greatly accelerated my education to do the work that we're required to do. So I appreciate the opportunity.
So you guys encountered the 20-cent problems, paradigms, Then the other thing, we talked about how this SSO is a monthly assignment. The other thing I think is probably worth pointing out, and I think this, one of the cases we did today was an example of it. When we're going through the 1.2.2 rulemaking, there was some debate or questions about how active hearing examiners should be in asking questions during cases. Just because of, like what Commissioner Nybert was saying, we might be able to speed things up if we hear the case. We also, from my point of view, might be able to screw things up if we hear the cases. But sometimes when you're getting questions from hearing examiners, it's because I asked them. Okay, so it's not, they might be the pointy end of the spear, but I had some real questions in that liability insurance case. And I couldn't be there at the hearing. So hearing examiner asked some questions because I asked him to. So to me, that's part of the partnership between commissioners and hearing examiners. It's not an example of activism by hearing examiners. So I just thought it's worth it to point that out. And if there's a way to make that more obvious in the future, maybe we can do that. But I appreciate hearing examiners, like everybody else at the commission, have an important job to do in this world we're in, where we got to do bigger, faster, more. They're under as much pressure as anybody else is to perform on a shorter time frame than they used to be. So just want to make sure I acknowledge that. And again, it was the SPS liability case that reminded me that, yeah, she asked some questions good. They might have been my fault. So anyway, that's all I got.
Well, thank you both for the discussion today. I knew it was going to be a longer meeting, but I think that we had really good discussion on substantive issues, and now it's time for a late lunch. Thank you all. We're adjourned.